Go, I'm not finishing that. If there's one long-running superhero franchise that I've been watching for years, it's... not you. It's Power Rangers. Giant robot piloting, toy selling, pose making, and spandex clad.
That is not spandex! The material is a self-assembling memory!
Okay, not spandex, but we know who the Power Rangers are. Did you know the series has been around for 28 years? Power Rangers has surpassed The Simpsons in episode count, with the former approaching 1,000 and the latter still in the 700s. One reason the series has stayed fresh is through its formerly yearly, now bi-yearly, reboots. Every new season of the show effectively resets with a new storyline, theming, and cast. The previous seasons are still canon, but the show jumps over to another side of the vast world of Power Rangers. With this much change, it's only natural for there to be differences between iterations of the show. That may be the fight choreography, the acting, the physical shooting location of the production. You can take your pick. What we're going to focus on is the show's music. No, I'm not talking about the show's theme songs. As good as some of them are, Wild Force is a banger. We're talking about the background music and its evolution throughout the series run. Or should I say, de-evolution. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was a 90s pop sensation. Supporting the show's already unique visual identities of color-coded heroes and combining dinosaurs was the music of one man, Ron Wasserman. Wasserman is best known for not only composing the famous Go Go Power Rangers theme song, but also the opening theme to X-Men the Animated Series. His scoring for Power Rangers is highly recognized for its heavy and power metal-inspired guitar melodies and riffs. For the latter part of the show's first season, the show featured original songs playing in the background written and sung by Wasserman. The up-tempo driving songs of Wasserman created a jukebox-like effect for viewers of the show. This wasn't normal background music. These were tracks with vocals, more in line with insert songs. History of Power Rangers creator Linkara dubbed it the Wasserman Factor. The non-vocal instrumental music, the main topic of this video, felt like a mix of sitcom and rock that set the tone as a fast-paced action show, but with a lot of heart. It's good, but here's my unpopular opinion. There's not a whole lot of variety in both the vocal and non-vocal music. The energy level was just always high. Don't get me wrong, it's a rockin' soundtrack, but it's just too much of a good thing. Too much electric guitar. There's no tension. Now, why should we care if the music is the same most of the time? If it's good all the time, why should we be complaining? Well, let's dip our toes into some very light music theory. Bear with me, we'll get back into Power Rangers in a bit. Music, as a medium, is another way to express a story. Not necessarily a verbatim story, but you do go on a journey. There's a basic musical concept called tension and release, or resolution. Imagine the tension of riding uphill on a roller coaster and building up all this energy before releasing it as you pass the apex and into the first dip. Just apply that to music. Let's look at a basic scale, but stop before the last note. Sounds incomplete, huh? Can you guess what that last note is? When I stop at that second to last note, that little noggin of yours really wants to fill in the blank. Your brain hears this note in the context of the scale, and because we're conditioned by Western musical practices, it expects it to end with an ending note. You have an expectation, but when you defy that expectation, that creates tension. It's the roller coaster without the drop. And when that drop happens, it's all the more satisfying. For early Power Rangers, tension did sometimes happen.
Man, what is that? Major funky.
However, it was inconsistent. It would either be forgotten about, resolved improperly, or the music would change upon revisiting the tense situation. Different kinds of tension. The music composition and the writing needed to work in tandem. When it comes to action scenes, viewers of the show know what that sounds like. High energy and high tempo. But what about sad scenes? Melancholy moments? Moments of pure anger, grief, or struggle? Some seasons suffer more from being locked into the upbeat nature of the music, with no wiggle room to transition into something more serious. Eventually, the show would mature gradually over the next few years, allowing for more complex moods, though it wouldn't last forever.
A little high voltage, anyone?
As the seasons went on, more serialized storytelling would become the norm. While there were little nuggets of it from Mighty Morphin, Zeo, and Turbo, there was a period of time between In Space and Wild Force where the composers began to use more incidental and dynamic music choices when called for. Serious moments were allowed to have serious music, or even no music at all.
Wesley, what's the meaning of this? You're a Time Force Ranger.
I wanted to tell you, Dad, but I couldn't. Look, you don't know what you're up against here. People are getting hurt. All because you want more money. How much is enough for you, Dad?
No, that's not it at all. You don't understand anything about my business. I have the perfect future planned out for you.
Your future, not mine. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm really making a difference.
Wes, wait, stop. Listen, if you just let me explain, you'd understand you're talking a bunch of nonsense.
No. All my life, I've done what you wanted me to do. But now I'm in control of my own future.
Wes, son. Hey, don't walk away from me when I'm... Wesley, you walk away, you'll regret it! Wesley!
Don't be stupid, Wes! You should listen to your father!
Hey! Where are you going? Huh? Finish me! What? Are you too much of a coward? Why won't you finish me off?
Another brief tangent here. Silence is an important part of music and can create a more grounded feeling. It can also be used to contrast when there is music, such as creating a sort of ceasefire feel for when the music does return.
Ready!
Enough of this child's play! It's time to finish this! Yes! Now that's what I call a strike! Ha 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 ha!
Carter, do you think this is gonna work?
It has to.
All the little rangers lying in a row.
What? It can't be!
Serve them up to Diabolico!
A little closer. Come on. Now!
A lack of music is absolutely still a musical choice. No music in some contexts can be a form of tension, especially in cases where the show sits on a moment for long or when you know there is an expected musical cue. There's a scene during a team-up episode between Power Rangers Time Force and Wild Force that I'm guessing is more likely an editing mistake where no music track plays in the background, but it has a side effect of making the action feel much more raw. Well, let's set silence aside, shall we? We're moving on to the best part of the late 90s/early 2000s scoring. When you think of Spider-Man, especially from the 60s cartoon, The song that might come to mind is
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man.
For Power Rangers, it's the obvious go-go, you get the point. These aren't just little earworms, they are meant to be highly recognizable. In the case of Go-Go, it's highly marketable, to gain brand recognition.
Your problem is branding.
No, my problem is you.
Within the show, however, recognizable bits of music aren't necessarily for the sake of branding.
No, it's branding.
Okay, fine, whatever. Branding is basically just a sense of familiarity, and familiarity comes from things called motifs, or leitmotifs. Let's start with one of the most recognizable motifs in the franchise. The Green Ranger's Dragon Dagger in the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers plays this iconic fanfare to summon his mighty Dragon Zord from the ocean depths. It's kinda cool. It's also a flute that sounds like a trumpet with a clarinet body. Oh, and some valves for good measure. For such an iconic tune, imagine how disappointing it'd be to see the Dragon Dagger return only to hear something else. This actually happens in Power Rangers Dino Thunder. In Space would be the first full season to feature an orchestral scoring, although it does sound like MIDI or VST. But it would still sprinkle in original music from Wasserman, as well as other composers such as Jeremy Sweet. This would be the last season to feature such songs. I'm going to introduce a new concept, the ID theme. It's not an official term by any stretch, but I'm going to use it to describe certain pieces that play in association to that season's specific Ranger team.
Yes, it can. No, Leo. The honor was all ours. Until next time. Let's do it!
The ID theme is a motif. While Zeo and Turbo sort of had this, In Space is the first season to take the motif and change it to fit different scenes. A big part of a motif is that it's a general idea that can be put into different contexts. The use of a motif establishes a familiarity to the subject, but it's the changes made to them that have a powerful effect on the situation.
I am the Duke Org. Zenaku.
Another Duke Org?
What do you want?
I have been awakened to carry out 3,000 years of vengeance.
What are you talking about?
Whoa! I can't believe my eyes!
Howling Wolf!
Unbelievable!
Wild Force, in my opinion, does this the best by scoring with several motifs and trusting the audience to infer more subtle writing in the music. The composer for this season, Leo Rosner, did a really good job. I sure hope he does well with his career. Oh, wow. He's done X-Men and, dear lord, Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Zooey mama. Partway through Time Force, the franchise would be bought by Disney as part of a package deal when they purchased the Fox Kids network. Why would Disney be interested in a live-action superhero multimedia franchise with diverse properties within them allowing for mixing and matching and universe building? Kinda weird. This was long before Disney owned Marvel. But at the time, Disney was uninterested in Power Rangers. The first season produced under Disney was technically Power Rangers Wild Force, though the same production team behind the previous Saban Entertainment produced seasons were responsible for the show, so it fits more in line with what came prior. But the mouse cared little for the show. In order to cut costs, filming for future seasons moved from California to New Zealand. Under Disney, the show faced several challenges, such as a reduced budget, a recurring threat of cancellation, and hilarious scenes of New Zealand actors' accents slipping through the very poor American ones. One thing that wouldn't return for the show's first New Zealand-produced season, Ninja Storm, were the composers. Technically there was one named Bruce Lynch, but he didn't seem to do much composing. At least not in the same sense as before, if any. Disney would employ a stock music service called APM for its compositions. I'm not sure if this was Bruce Lynch's decision or Disney's decision, but I'm just going to put the blame on Disney. The biggest enemy to Power Rangers isn't an army of evil space aliens, but budget. Stock music is typically going to be cheaper than full-time composing. At the same time, I doubt Disney paid for the rights to music from previous seasons, so recycling those wouldn't have been an option. Hence, the Dragon Dagger and Dino Thunder sounding completely wrong. The only time older music is heard is during the 500th episode clip show called Legacy of Power, where it's present in archive footage.
The Lightspeed Rangers needed one more to complete their mission. That's when Ryan joined the team. Titanium power!
Hey, I was watching that!
I don't have anything against stock music. APM has provided music for many shows, including SpongeBob SquarePants, but it has its applications. For a story-driven and serialized show, it's difficult to give the world an identity. With stock music, you're just filling in a blank, but you're not painting a picture musically. The cake's baked for you. You usually can't customize the music too much, if at all, to the specific needs of the show. You can take the Motifs and ID theme talk I did and throw it out the window. This lack of specially composed music makes the show sound generic. Most tracks are written for very specific moods or scenarios with little to no flexibility. This harkens back to Mighty Morphin levels of, this is the scene, this is the mood. Another limitation is that these tracks are typically composed individually by different people. This makes it hard to find two or more tracks that match in style. But the most annoying drawback of all this is the unoriginal and cheesier sounding music cues.
What are you guys doing here?
We came to rescue you.
Nice job. Way to show up when I don't need you anymore.
You sure about that?
I swear I've heard some of this music on South Park.
Get off the streets! Get off the streets! Old people are driving! Run! Run! Oh my God!
Oh, you've got to be f***ing kidding me. Of course, South Park also uses APM for their music. It fits in a show like South Park due to its comedic and outrageous nature. You're willing to suspend your disbelief for it. Power Rangers, on the other hand, is a show that has moments where you want to take it seriously. I wouldn't even be opposed to the stock music if it was done with some effort. Despite APM providing possibly one of the largest libraries for stock music for the entertainment industry, they don't even bother to put in the appropriate music in Power Rangers. They had so much trouble that they gave up on finding tracks that fit heavier emotional scenes.
You don't think I can handle it because I'm incompetent and bumbling and clumsy and
Exactly as your mother was.
This may actually be a case of a mandate from up above, a problem more known about in future seasons. While details during the Disney seasons are unclear, later seasons had mandates put in place limiting what can and cannot be done in the show. This includes bizarre rules such as no serialization other than multi-part episodes, not being able to say the word death, which is somewhat understandable, or them forcing all the actors to speak like they're preschoolers. Yeah, I know the show's for little kids, but it doesn't have to talk down to them. While specific details have not been released, I wouldn't be surprised if this had an effect on what kind of music can be played in the show.
City.
I want to take a little time to highlight Power Rangers RPM, which was Disney's final season, and only due to a contract for one more to be made thanks to Jetix Europe. The mouse probably would have just ended it had their lawyers not noticed. Anyway, this season is the only season to properly use stock music, and I wanted to highlight how Power Rangers RPM uses music as a storytelling tool. In the episode Dr. K, and another episode as well foreshadowing it, the titular character of the episode, Dr. K, is seen playing Paganini's Caprice No. 24 on violin. Trust me, as someone who tried to learn and play this, but on a saxophone, this piece is no joke. The amount of technicality required to play it takes a lot of practice. So why does this piece matter? Spoilers for RPM, even though it's been out for over a decade. The character of Dr. K was a child prodigy who was kidnapped by a government think tank called Alphabet Soup, where she was forced to develop military arms. She was kept in a room and wasn't allowed outside. The only thing she was able to do was to hone her musical skills. The use of Paganini has a dual purpose of showing her high level of intellect through her musicality and the recurring nature of it, as she still plays it after her escape, representing the permanent impact of her time at Alphabet Soup.
Happy birthday, Kay.
We need you to write us a very special computer program.
Can I go outside?
Outside? Sorry, honey. You're still very, very allergic to the sun.
Maybe next year. Now don't forget to make your birthday wish.
You do have a wish, don't you?
I wish I could remember my name.
She closes herself off from all human contact. All she knows is constant refinement and work. Her intellect is a curse that she plays over and over through the piece, and even integrates it into her development of the Ranger Operator series. When it's revealed that she was the one who created the world-ending virus, Venjix, the haunting music of Paganini plays over the Zenith Megazord's final attack. No victory music, no quippy lines. Dr. K is exhausted after playing the piece. Paganini's Caprice No. 24 being an echo of her lost childhood.
Logging in! Engine cell, activate! Wheel blaster! Ready! Target locked! Fire!
After Disney threw in the towel with Power Rangers, around the same time they bought Marvel, the franchise would be brought back by Saban Brands, the original owners of the show during the Fox era. The show would find its new home among Talking Sponge Friend and Bucktooth Wish Boy. This buyback period was referred to as the Neo-Saban era. Things were looking up with the announcement of Power Ranger Samurai, an adaptation of the heavily Japanese-themed season Samurai Sentai Shinkenger. Until it came out, of course. There are problems with this season that warrant its own video, but it did bring, for the first time since Wild Force, a new composer in Noam. I hope I'm not butchering his name. His work on the show was less than stellar in my opinion, not necessarily better or worse than Disney. The music served not to help create an identity for the show, but to inject the identity of a different show, that show being the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. You return to a rock-heavy soundtrack, but by this point, it was cliche. Gee, who'd have thought that society's outlook on what's cool can change in the span of 18 years?
Oh, Porchy is one outrageous dude. He's totally in my face.
Wiggity, wiggity, word up. Rock on, party.
When are they gonna give us some real music?
The soundtrack he introduced rivaled Mighty Morphin in terms of how one-noted, figuratively, it feels. And that's on purpose. Samurai as a season is as much in your face about the original show with only a thin veil of Japanese theming. I know I said I wouldn't mention the theme songs in this video, but they literally just recycled Go Go Power Rangers, and it's not even that great of a version of it, in my opinion. Now we're back at square one. We're back to having every background song maxing out on energy, as if 90s extreme and radical culture was still in.
Hey, kids, always recycle.
To the extreme! Busted!
Noam Caniel's composing would persist through Power Rangers Beast Morphers. We do get a few themes, though nothing on the level of In Space Through Wild Force. After the conclusion of Power Rangers Ninja Steel some years later, the show would once again change hands and would be purchased and produced by Hasbro, though with the previous production team continuing on. The first in the series under Hasbro was Power Rangers Beast Morphers, which Canyon would stay on to compose for. The next season, and as of this video's release, the show's current iteration, Power Rangers Dino Fury features a new composer, Bert Cellen. Cellen is a Dutch composer, best known for his work composing for the Disney Channel, and his portfolio's pretty good. Now, I mentioned mandates earlier in the video. Cellen's music, while a definite upgrade with its own flavor compared to Canyon's, doesn't deviate too much from the established musical formula introduced in the Neo-Saban seasons. Like I said, I don't know if these mandates included the music, but it would make sense. As for whether they still apply in Dino Fury, showrunner Simon Bennett revealed in a Sci-Fi interview that those kinds of mandates have eased off with Dino Fury. However, he does mention that there isn't a designated Bulk and Skull rip-off slapstick comedy duo, yet there is in Jane and Jayborg in the current season, so who knows? If there is something holding him back, I say let Bert write something good. By the way, this is the currently airing season, so spoilers ahead, though I won't be going into too much detail on the plot points. For Dino Fury, the background music relatively improves compared to Beast Morphers, and scenes are able to express some form of seriousness. For example, scenes of Void Knight talking to his aquarium-bound lover Santora have a really eerie-sounding solo vocal track that almost resembles a theremin, harkening back to old alien abduction films of the 50s. I do like the synth keyboard lines that recur throughout the season. While I wouldn't call them themes, they are familiar enough to somewhat act like them. The reason I say somewhat is that I don't think these lines have any particular association, or that they feel like they're speaking for a particular on-screen element or action. Let's take a look at the first episode, Destination Dino Henge. I think the music here is done very well. When Ollie and Amelia first morph, the music quiets down and holds back. As they transform, the music crescendos before quieting back down to help emphasize the sudden shock and wonder of these new Rangers. This quieting back down really helps the audience not get sensory overload and to take a step back before jumping back into the action.
Whoa. What's happening?
Yes!
What? All right. We're Power Rangers.
Emphasis on power.
Speaking of jumping back into the action, it literally does that, and it does it strong. Ollie jumps over some shelving, and that synth line I mentioned plays, and it is loud and in your face, but backs off when appropriate. The creative control of volume is small, but it can pack a punch. This is called dynamics. Think of the music against the dialogue. Are characters' lines being drowned by the sheer force of it? Is it staying back and letting the dialogue carry? How many sounds are there happening at once, and is it chaotic or calm? Dino Fury handles this concept well. At the very least, it's an improvement, but it's something basic that should have been happening in the first place. A lot of my gripe with modern Power Rangers is in its lack of rewatchability, and I feel the music can have a lot to do with that. While the music is by no means Grammy-winning, it does affect our emotional understanding of the show, and you can get this understanding by manipulating the score to fit the writing. In my opinion, orchestral scores have the most flexibility to achieve this. That's why films typically go for this type of sound, and it's not without reason. Looking purely at the instrumentation, the modern orchestra, consisting of strings, winds, percussion, and sometimes a choir, is a machine with many parts and many permutations. There are plenty of sounds one can make with an orchestral by simply adding or removing certain instruments. Texturally, talking about the timbre, specifically how it sounds, an orchestral allows for a lot of variety on that aspect alone. One of my favorite examples of this in the superhero genre is Captain America's theme. Again, there's the leitmotif, but listen to what's happening around it. Think of the context that these would be played in. One is the triumphant and bombastic Captain America March. It not only acts as our standard hero theme, but also to help inform and sell the fact that it's a period piece. Marches, while stern and militant, are also very traditional and really grounds the film's World War II setting. On the other hand, the other variation of the theme, played at the end of the film, is reminiscent of a military funeral. It just oozes honor, valor, and respect. At the same time, it leaves you feeling empty. Imagine hearing this from down a long hallway. It's an oddly liminal feeling, but it works on our pre-established feelings towards loss that many of us unfortunately felt or will feel. A world without Captain America. For now. Of course, Power Rangers is primarily television, not film, so you gotta do what you can with the budget, what little of it Power Rangers has. But all it takes is to make some informed decisions about the music. As a nod to their jungle theming, Lost Galaxy incorporates a marimba into the second theme for the Galactabeasts. Lightspeed uses drum corps-inspired music with undertones of the theme song.
Ranger, rescue ready! Green Ranger, rescue ready!
Yellow Ranger, rescue ready!
Lightspeed, rescue! Yeah!
The Time Force Rangers live in a clock tower with a bell in it, so sometimes you'll hear bells. It ain't that hard, people. With all that being said, why orchestral over some other styles such as the rock/sitcom music of Mighty Morphin, or the vaguely Irish-inspired music of Mystic Force? Well, with any creative choice in life, you go big or go home with your musical decisions. And orchestrals can be tailor-fit very easily to more situations. Again, orchestrals are flexible. Many times in Mystic Force, I personally find that the show has a lot of musical identity where they're in the root core deep in the forest. The music is reminiscent of Lord of the Rings, which can be enough to flip that switch in people's minds, but during scenes at the Rockporia music shop, it's generic stock hip-hop-ish music. Mystic Force also does some orchestral and fight scenes / lore, but it's all generic stock, so it's not like any of it blends in with anything. Power Rangers music has the potential to be very good, and in the past has proven to be very good. But at the current time, it's stagnant. Music is a storytelling tool, and not fully utilizing it in a show that, in some shape or form, involves drama and character moments is a damn shame. Even as a kid, I noticed the music subconsciously and fell in love during that golden era that ended with Wild Force. When I got my first taste of Ninja Storm, it didn't immediately click, but I noticed that I was rewatching that and future seasons even less. I wasn't intrigued to revisit territory with unfamiliar themes to welcome me back to that corner of the Rangerverse. I'm okay with where the music is currently as of Dino Fury, but I know it can be better and I want to push it to be better. Power Rangers, I challenge you to do that. But hey, at least we're done with the stock music sound effects. So what are your thoughts on the use of recurring themes in Power Rangers, or any other media for that matter? Leave a comment below, or else. And consider liking and subscribing as well. If you want to see more of me, I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/mintbaribusiness. You can also check out my Twitter and my Discord in the description. Yes! Hell yeah.